Welcome you all here today for the 829th round of Council. And of course, today we have the Lifestyle and Community Committee meeting, beginning at 9 a.m. or 9:03, followed a little bit later in the day by Transport and Infrastructure. Yeah, looking forward to this double header today. Getting on with the business of running the city. I'd like to acknowledge our Director.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Director. Management team. And our very capable secretarial team.
Yeah, you acknowledge everybody else's. No, we actually hold it.
Wow. You see, Mark, we can't have a 15-second meeting. I need to pad it out. The councillors, I have no apologies.
Well, technically you can.
Could I? Oh, yeah, classic.
Yeah.
Classic. So the start items are for the Rising Star items. Yeah. Anyway, councillors, I've received no apologies. Director, were any provided to us? No. No leaves of absence. We'll deal with confirmation of minutes perhaps as a start item. Unless there are any questions concerning the earlier minutes, no. Item 5.1. Everyone happy dealing with that as a start item? I'd like to unstar 6.1 for a bit of a changed recommendation there. Well, if you'll accept my amendment, happy days. 6.2, councillors, any questions on the Local Area Works Program additions schedule? No, we'll keep that as a start item. 7.1, Currumbin Eco Parkland. I think that warrants a little bit of debate, so we'll maintain that as an unstart item. Federation War Coastal Reserve Landscape Concept Plan, I think definitely. Let's keep that as an unstart item. Just before we move the start items, councillors, were there any items of general business that you intended to table? No, I've got nothing today. All right, happy days. All right. Would someone like to move those start items? Councillor Gates, seconded Councillor LaCastro. I will put that to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried. Wonderful. Councillors, this brings us to item 6.1, the enforcement options for unlawfully parked vehicles. Now, Director, do we have a presentation? I think we've got one here on my cheat sheet. Was there one to be had, or are we just talking through the report?
Through you, Chair, we'll just talk you through the report, and we have Joe Fury Lopez, who's currently acting as the Manager of Health and Reg Services.
All right, thank you. So we'll just have a quick discussion about the item, councillors, and I've got a couple of questions, and if you'd like to ask a question as well, just throw up your hand and I'll put you on the list. Happy days.
I'll start by way of preamble before I hand over to Joe, through you, Chair and councillors. So this is really in response to the ability or the inability we currently have to quickly clear away vehicles which are parked in areas of no stopping, acknowledging Councillor Caldwell's leadership in pointing us in the right direction to have these areas of the city where there's high traffic areas at peak times particularly, and we've had numerous times complaints from the public about vehicles which are parked in those areas. So not unlike other major cities, we're looking to furnish ourselves now with the ability, should we come across a vehicle in those areas, to quickly remove it. As soon as we have notification of that, we're looking to immediately remove it so we can clear the way ready for traffic to flow. So that's the substance of what is before us today. Have you got anything else that you'd like to add to that, Joe?
It really is about amending the local law to allow us to be able to immediately tow the vehicle, whereas at the moment we're actually unable to do that. So that's the key component of the recommendation today, so that we can actually make those local law amendments.
Councillor Gates.
Just about how long will that take?
That will take just a little over 12 months.
It's annoying, isn't it?
I've got a couple of questions which might foreshadow a bit of an addition to the recommendation. Just want to sketch out a hypothetical scenario. In many places across the city, we have regulated parking. So sometimes we have a gazetted area, so a traffic management area. Other times we have signage. And my sense is that we often install these signs and adopt these regulations in order to encourage turnover of spaces. So they're typically in areas where there is huge demand, and we try to create a little bit of equity. There are some high-profile areas. I'm going to talk about Broadbeach, for example. Councillor Young mentioned the new Broadbeach Cultural Centre. There's a similar spot. It's Burleigh Foreshore, for example, another area where sometimes abandoned vehicles, unlawfully parked vehicles, are allowed to occupy a space for up to 2 weeks before council takes action. Now, I understand that 2-week period exists or is defined in an internal policy or procedure of ours, and it's our way of satisfying a test under legislation to provide the owner of the vehicle, or for us to take steps, reasonable steps, to contact the owner of the vehicle, asking them to take corrective action, i.e. to remove their car from this high demand space. Could I ask, what would be required for us to reduce that 2-week window so that if there is a vehicle occupying a space where we would like to encourage turnover, what's preventing us from reducing that 2-week window to, say, 48 hours after having taken a reasonable step to contact the owner?
Yes, Chair, you're quite correct. We do have an internal process in place which allows 14 days for the owner of the vehicle to be identified and to remove the vehicle from that space. It is an internal process, so we can reduce that timeframe down. That is something that we can do. It is not legislative. And keeping in mind that we only remove abandoned vehicles that are unregistered as well. So they are unregistered vehicles. We do not remove registered vehicles. We go through a separate process there where we try to locate the owner.
In the so unregistered vehicles, as far as I'm concerned, that window should be, this is my personal view, should be as sort of short as possible. Get rid of them. But what would prevent us from dealing with a vehicle that is registered but has lingered at a 2-hour parking spot, for example, for a week, and to treat that vehicle in the same way as one parked in a no stopping or clearway zone?
Yes, and with these local law amendments, we could make that decision to remove that vehicle once these local law amendments are in place, because it is about that immediate removal of a vehicle.
So, I mean, councillors, my view is to treat abandoned vehicles in regulated parking areas very harshly, because they're not registered, they're effectively uninsured, and in high-profile spaces they can be quite an eyesore. And if an internal policy allows us to deal with those, I'd definitely be supporting it. I'm just going to open up a little bit of a discussion around the appetite for dealing with vehicles that have overstayed for like a week in one of these high-profile areas, dealing with them in the same way we would in a no stopping or clearway situation. Is it a bit of overreach, do you feel? I'm going to go left to right. So, Councillor Owen-Jones.
So I don't have a problem with us having the ability to do with that. The only challenge that we have is, I know at least one vehicle where somebody is occupying it, so we've got that, I'm going to say, that delicate balance between removing a vehicle for clearly the obvious reasons and then the fact that there's a party choosing to live in it as well. So we just need to be careful, I think.
Councillor Gates, do you have a view?
Well, I think we should tighten things up a little. Has a big impact on the flow of traffic, as Councillor Caldwell will tell you next.
So, I mean, from a flow of traffic point of view, I think this ticks a lot of boxes. I suppose this is our opportunity to shoehorn the parking supply issue into the mix. Councillor Caldwell, your thoughts?
Well, I think what you're proposing is obviously in a non-travel lane type scenario, which I think we all find frustrating, that people overstay and use those spots as effectively storage for vehicles, knowing full well that there's not really much of a disincentive for them. So if there was a disincentive to doing the wrong thing in some of those areas, I think it would be a useful tool for us to have.
So what I'd expect, and I'll come to you next, Councillor Gates, is perhaps that number 1 is amended so that it would read, unlawfully parked and hazardous vehicles in peak time, activated no stopping and clearway zones, as well as from city venues and, I don't know, regulated parking spaces?
Yes, Chair, we'd need to put that in there as well
Yeah.
to become part of that local law amendment.
And then probably add 3. Sorry, and no one's moved this. I just want to put up some words to guide our conversation, councillors. To add a 3, which would read that internal policies and procedures are updated to reduce the time required to remove vehicles, abandoned vehicles in traffic management areas. I'm just trying to give the officers as much discretion there as possible. I'm going to quickly jump back to Councillor Gates and then to Councillor Taylor, then O'Neill.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to ask, I recall when I was first a member of council, there was a sign at every entry to the city identifying a 2-hour parking limit across the city. I recall that they were removed, and I think it was a state direction that we couldn't have that 2-hour time limit across the city. Is that correct?
Through the chair, look, I can't recall whether those signs were removed as part of a state direction, but we do have several 2-hour parking precincts within the city which do have the appropriate signage still in place.
Yeah, it did allow at the time us to issue infringements, and it was 2 hours, and I think it changed with the ability for people to park caravans and trailers and what have you on street as well. And of course now they get left there for days and days, and we've already had that conversation. But I just wondered if it was a state directive that caused us to remove those signs. And I've been here longer than probably most people here, except for Councillor Cassidy.
Sorry, yeah, I don't recall either if it was a state direction, but I believe it was though, and I believe it was, and I could be wrong, but I believe it was because of it impacting just generally people parking in any street on the road. So if you're, any resident as such parking out, because it was the whole city basically for 2 hours. But Councillor Gates is right, it has opened the door, which is a huge problem for those oversized vehicles and caravans, etc. Whether there's something we can do, but what is the length? Is it 7 metres now and
7.5 through the chair.
7.5 and 1, and how many tonne?
4.5 tonne.
4.5 tonne, yeah. So, I mean, but that's a whole different, thing that we need to address. But yes, I believe it was state. I can't be 100%, but that's why it was done, because it was impacting on just general residential parking across the city.
Councillor O'Neill, I did say I was going from left to right, but I think perhaps you threw up your hand to respond to something. Did you want to quickly jump in?
I just wanted something clarified, because we had a situation in Coolangatta a couple of weeks ago. We had 3 vehicles parked in a regulated parking area. The lady was living in one vehicle, but certainly told our officers that she was not homeless. She was just there because there was some dispute going on about her house, and she refused. And we did not have the ability to tow any of those vehicles. So I'm hoping that this will cover that sort of thing as well, because the officer said, well, we just can't tow her. We can give infringement notices. She had a for sale sign on one of the vehicles for 3 weeks in Marine Parade in Coolangatta. It was ridiculous. And I'm trying to explain to all and sundry why we couldn't tow this vehicle or the 3 vehicles. So bring on the 12 months, I say.
Yeah, and look, I think we've all had a situation where somebody's storing a vehicle on the road and it's cheaper for them to park their vehicle and cop the fine once than actually put the vehicle into storage. And that sucks because we can't issue a fine on the second day or third day or fourth day, right? Councillor Taylor.
Thank you. And I think in relation to what you're just saying, and I think that's what I was trying to come to tighten it up, our challenge is that if someone gets a fine in any of these areas for overstaying the parking, my understanding is we can't fine them again and we can't do anything with them. They can just sit there as long as possible if it's a registered vehicle. So if we have got the ability to tighten those, the policy up that we stop the ability for someone to be able to stay there as long as they like and get one fine, that's important. And touching on Councillor Gates or general conversation in relation to traffic areas, we do have them through the city. And if you go into a certain area, it could be 2, it could be 3, but we do have the signage as you come into areas notifying people that you have got a timed area that you're moving into, but that will vary depending on each of the areas you're moving into. But I'm really supportive of tightening up the ability of giving powers to our officers, because I feel like their hands are tied when they've got a situation of someone overparking.
Yeah, I think you'd be probably more effective than most councillors, given you've got that central area.
Yes.
So it affects Chevron Island, Surfers Paradise, Broadbeach.
Yes, and it's really important as we're growing as a city that these visitors parks are there for our visitors when we come in. So we've got to disencourage residents from leaving their second, third car out in the street and the trailers as well. So we've got the powers to have a timed zone in the city, which works well. The challenge is if someone wants to just ignore it, get one fine, I feel we don't have the power, so tightening it up would really help.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Hamill.
Question, Chair. I was just interested in the clearway zones side of things. So in reading the advice here about the requirements to designate a road a clearway, it indicates that none of our roads actually meet that requirement at the moment. Are there any that are close to it? Like,
Through the chair, we've been through this in T&I. It's actually because they're local control roads and we have the ability only to have what's called no stopping, which is essentially the same function as a clearway, no stopping between certain hours.
Right.
So in all senses of the term, it is consistent with a clearway.
Councillor Caldwell, you happy to move that?
I would love to.
I'm happy to second it. Love your work. Would you like to open debate?
I don't think there'll be any debate required because I think there'll be unanimous support for what is a very sensible step for us as a city to take, and that is that we need to be able to manage our roadways effectively, and this is quite simple, but I believe will be effective. One of the best road projects we've seen in the last few years has been the extra lane being added on Marine Parade through Southport. Northbound, it is extremely effective by adding that, using that extra bitumen. So if we can, from time to time, utilise existing road pavement to carry moving traffic, particularly in peak hours, that is actually a sensible intervention for us to take in order to provide better traffic flows so that people can get home faster and safer to their homes. So I fully support this because it's been dragging on for too long as a city that we haven't been able to take what is a basic step required in traffic management that I think is available in all other major jurisdictions. So I think we will see some effective change through this implementation, and the sooner it can happen, the better.
Here. Member for Broadwater. Great contribution there. That lovable scamp. Cedar of Bravina doesn't exist anymore, regrettably. Classic. Was it? All right. Councillors, happy to put that to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? That's carried. And Councillor Hamill, perhaps we can count on your support at full council. No, that's good. Good work there. All right, councillors, we have 2 closed session items remaining. One concerns the Currumbin Eco Parkland, which is also called a borrow pit because we're going to have to borrow so much money for it. Just joking. Councillors, it is a closed session item. I think it's appropriate that we do move into closed because of the potential financial impacts there. There are a statement of reasons on the screen that's moved by Councillor O'Neill. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Gates. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried. And if we could turn off the live streaming. That is carried. Welcome back, viewers. Having considered some confidential information in closed session, we've now returned to open and have a changed recommendation for the consideration of the committee. It deals with the matter in 4 parts. Councillor Caldwell proposes to move that. It will be seconded by Councillor Gates. Before opening debate, I'd just like to flag that Councillor O'Neill has foreshadowed the city officer recommendation, which will become the motion should this fall over. Councillor Caldwell.
Thanks, Mr Chair. So in moving this recommendation, firstly, I note that the state government took a decision just prior to the last state election to compulsorily acquire this large tract of land at the very southern end of our city, and for the merits of that acquisition, I have no particular problem. That's entirely within their ability to do that, and there is certainly a body of evidence that parts of this site have strong environmental values. What I don't want to see is that the local government authority is the one that bears the financial burden of delivering on the state's ambition and a state decision and perhaps a state election commitment when we had no role in making that decision in the first place. When this matter last came to council, we quite clearly resolved that we were happy to be at the table and that we would want to play a role in the master planning because we bring a lot of local knowledge and ability, and I think that's entirely proper and that would be valuable to the process. But there was a very clear statement made that our support for the master planning process was predicated on the state government committing to fund the entirety of the capital costs to deliver the master plan and its ongoing maintenance. Now, I just think we need to tread carefully so that we don't accidentally stumble into a significant financial and delivery burden for the ratepayers of this city in delivering on a state government ambition to provide an embellished parkland and nature reserve in this area. So the resolution that I've put forward simply restates that we are happy to be at the table, but that we need a commitment from the state government that they will deliver the capital costs and they will provide the ongoing maintenance costs. We are, I am sure, very happy to partner with them in delivering maintenance because I'm sure it would be argued that we are best placed to deliver that, both in terms of our location and our skill set with NAMU. But I really don't want that burden to now fall on the ratepayers of this city, and I feel it's proper that the state government should stump up for the commitment that they had previously made. So this is merely wanting to make sure we're at the table, provide our expertise, but not throwing the state government costs onto ratepayers of this city. And I think that's the right thing for us to do.
Hear, hear. Speakers against, Councillor Tozer.
Thank you, Councillor Vorster. Look, I can't support the motion in its current form, and the substance of that opposition really just is that the first part of 4 and the omission of the officer's recommendation 3. Whilst I can't speak to that because it's only the motion on the table, I think that the wording in this motion, unfortunately, isn't collaborative in tone at all. In fact, it really is, as Councillor Caldwell has spelled out, a statement of opposition to some sort of election activity that occurred. And frankly, I think the substance of this matter is that there is a natural area. It has been acquired by the state, and our role is to offer some insight as current participants in the master planning process as to how it might best be managed. I'm fully supportive of Councillor Caldwell's adamant words around the capital cost and ongoing maintenance, but I can't support the wording that's currently before us because I actually do think the officers have done a really good job in identifying what is the best community outcome on this site, and I think we can word it better in order to obligate the state to do what they said they would do, and that is to fund the capital cost, and that is to fund the maintenance. I think we as a council can do better, and what we should be doing is, as Councillor O'Neill has foreshadowed, some adjustments to the officer's recommendations such that we can signal clearly to the community that we don't want the ratepayer to necessarily fund these matters, but we definitely want to recognise that the best community outcome is that the best and natural areas managers, help manage this land.
Thanks, Chairman. I'm going to support the motion. I think first and foremost we need to protect the ratepayers, and any commitment that we might make here obviously puts at risk funding that could be spent elsewhere. We recognise that the officers of NAMU are highly skilled and perhaps best placed to manage land. They do a wonderful job. And I guess it's clear in the confidential briefing that we have that they have expressed an appetite for this land, which maybe has encouraged the state to try and hand it over to us. But given the fact that this land is not identified for future growth, we have our LGIP planning underway, and we need to commit to providing what's necessary in the areas where there is growth that's identified through the LGIP. So this is just an additional parcel of land that will still be there for the community to enjoy. It's just a matter of who pays for the work that's necessary given the state's commitment. So I think it's a great parcel of land, and it's great to learn of all of the ecological values that exist on the site, but they will still be there. We're not taking them away. We're just trying to protect the ratepayers from having to fork out more money on a site that wasn't identified as being necessary to manage growth.
Thanks, Councillor Gates. Any speakers against the motion? Councillor O'Neill.
Thanks, Chair. And I do acknowledge that the recommendation by officers and the motion put forward here by Councillor Coyle aren't that different, really. We're all on the same page. But I think the recommendation from officers places us as a council in a good position to negotiate with the state government. And I think that that's where we need to be. The community expectations of an eco parkland on this site are certainly great. There's been a lot of publicity from the state government around this, given the circumstances. But I think that the council is best placed to maintain this piece of land, especially for Southern Gold Coast residents, but also for visitors to our area as well. I think it's be a fantastic draw card if managed properly, and I think that council could do that. So I'll be putting the motion forward if this motion doesn't get up. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor O'Neill. I'll just take the opportunity to make a contribution to the debate in the affirmative. I think all of us are highly supportive of this particular area as far as the high quality and high value nature conservation area is concerned, being protected and preserved, and we all hope and expect that it will be city officers carrying out that work, because they are amongst the best, if not the best, at what they do, and given their connection to the land as Gold Coasters, we'd expect them to perform much better than, say, departmental staff. My concern, though, is that we are in the midst of a booming population that has put so much of our infrastructure under pressure, and that infrastructure is not just the stormwater under the roads or the roads themselves. It's also our parks and open space. And when we go through the process of prioritising our investment in open space and that estate, we take a very, very, very objective approach to that. We look at where the need is and we slot those projects into our local government infrastructure plan, just as Councillor Gates mentioned. And this site does not appear in our local government infrastructure plan, Mark 1, and I certainly don't believe that it appears in our local government infrastructure plan version 2 at all. So if we are to spend $1 on infrastructure, green infrastructure, soft infrastructure, I would say we need to be spending that dollar where it meets the burden of growth. And this does not meet the burden of growth. In fact, what they did was they reduced the amount of housing that could be supplied in this area. They reduced it by forcibly acquiring the land. So I think they've actually undermined the case for the project in of itself, because they could have got very smart around sustaining an approval, but making sure that the balance of the site was in some way returned to the public benefit. Councillor Tozer talked about collaboration and his concern that this form of words was not collaborative. I have to say I have not found personally the state government very collaborative on the issues that are important to us. For example, Amendment Package 2 and 3, former ambitions to deliver a cruise ship terminal, and even their attitude towards another ecotourism project being the Cableway. They are not genuinely collaborative. So I don't think the state government has any right to take any particular offence that we're merely asking them to honour their election commitment. At worst, we're merely asking them, by treating them in the same way that they've treated us. And I don't see that as being necessarily a bad thing. The state government in this case, I believe, has written a cheque that their department can't cash. And I really worry about the impost that it might put onto ratepayers, not just in terms of the upfront cost, but if we were to take on these assets and at the end of some years take on maintenance, we might have these contributed assets sitting on our balance sheet, which might have ultimately very high renewal costs, potentially assets that are coming to the end of their useful life. So it's not just the maintenance impost we've got to think about in terms of keeping these things clean and functioning, but potentially the renewal of these assets towards the end of their useful life. And in that sense, I don't think we will get away from dealing with the capital costs unless this motion is carried. Because what this motion will do, that the foreshadow will not, is require a long-term funding agreement between the state and council. So councillors, I think we all support the project. If we want to limit the exposure to the ratepayer for the future costs involved in the state frolic, I'd urge you to support this, because Part 4 does what the foreshadow does not, and that is require a contract to be established between the council and the state government for the long-term management of the precinct. It's my contribution in the affirmative. Councillor Locastro, did you want to speak against?
I do and I don't, but I suppose I'm more do than don't in speaking against, because I think, as Councillor O'Neill said, I think generally we're all pretty much on the same page here in the sense that we're just splitting hairs over words. Mr Chair, you just actually mentioned that the foreshadowed motion doesn't address this, but there was talk about tweaking the foreshadowed, and obviously we can only go so far with that. I would be supportive of the foreshadowed if it actually spoke about that we only continue with a seat at the table if, a seat at the table on the understanding that the state government commits to the funding. It's just that wording, a bit like Councillor Tozer, that saying we take no further action almost seems like we don't want a seat at the table, and I think we do, provided that the state government is actually going to pay for it. So I don't want us to be picking up the costs either, the ratepayers to be picking up the costs, but I just think we can soften the wording. I think we need to show that we're still interested, because I think we are. So I think it's literally that simple.
All right, so Councillor Locastro, mindful of the fact that we shouldn't be debating an amendment to the foreshadowed motion, let me ask you then, how could 4 be softened so that we can...
I can move an amendment.
Okay, so So let's pick up on the word, perhaps, that Councillor Castro
Oh, as I said,
is
I don't like
struggling
the
with.
word softened, but you know what I'm just saying. I think what I'm saying is I think we need to show that we are interested, because I think we are, and I think we should be. I think.
I can soften it,
Okay.
Chairman.
Councillor Gates, what do you have for us?
How about in 4, we say council looks forward to participating in the master planning process once the state government commits to the entirety of the capital cost to deliver the master plan and its ongoing maintenance by way of a long-term funding agreement.
And Councillor Castro might note that is entirely consistent with the previous resolution, foreshadowing part 3, for which you voted for.
Yes,
Yeah.
as I say, for me, it's the wording, and I was going to say along those lines, but, you know, provided the state, so whether it's provided, whether it's, you know, it still says the same thing.
Once the state government commits to the
I
entirety.
said provided rather than once, but it means
Yep.
the same thing. So, as I say, it's just that I just didn't like the no further.
And are you happy with that, Councillor Caldwell?
Happy to accept that amendment?
I'm happy to accept that.
Okay. So,
I
Councillor
mean,
Gates.
I had only put up
That's fine.
a version of
He can-
words.
So, Councillor Gates, did you want to
I'm
just
happy for
dictate those
councillor
words?
Caldwell to still move it. I just am suggesting the words.
Are you happy just to dictate those words again there for our...
That council looks forward to participating in the master planning process once the state government commits to the entirety of capital cost to deliver the master plan. It's just the same. We're just replacing that council takes no further part with that council looks forward to participating in. And then we change once. Yeah. Yeah.
Perfect. Now remove the brackets.
Yeah. Oh, I don't mind whether the bracket's there or not.
Sorry,
we-
just the brackets themselves.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I just want to, I'll come to you next, Councillor Tozer. I just want to see whether this is sufficiently soft for Councillor Castro.
I said, yeah, okay, soft. Yeah. I said I don't like the word soften. I was trying to find a better word, but yeah.
Councillor Tozer, you had a question.
My question is, would, you know, we're obviously going through a very kind of loose amendment / adjustment process here, which is fine. Is there is there any reason why we wouldn't just include item 3 in the officer's recommendation? Because then I could support it and we could have a unanimous recommendation. So item 3 in the previous officer's recommendation is now, you know, implied. Is there any reason why we wouldn't just include 3?
Well, the only reason would be whether Councillor Caldwell and Councillor Gates can provide that tacit support, but we could move to an amendment process. Councillor Gates, you're still not there?
No, I'm happy
This is
with
the same.
I'm happy with councillor Caldwell's amendment.
3 is essential. You've got to have 3.
So I'm going to give us all the opportunity to speak to this. No? Everyone fine? Okay. So we have a foreshadowed recommendation, which is the city officer recommendation. What I propose doing now is to invite Councillor Caldwell to you don't need to close? Did you have a further question on this motion?
So the adjustments that have been made loosely constitute an amendment where there would normally be debate. I appreciate they haven't.
And I'm inviting you to make another contribution if you want.
My view is that the omission of the elements in 5.4, which are confidential,
Yes.
which formed part of the officer's recommendation, being omitted from this changed recommendation, I think undermine the role that council will play. I can't talk about the elements because they're confidential and I don't want to compromise the non-disclosure agreements that have been struck between council and the state. But I can't support the motion in its current form because the elements in 5.4, which are outlined in item 3 of the officer's recommendation, do not form part of the recommendation before us. I have no objection to 4, which is the substance of the change. I actually am fully supportive of it. But the officer's recommendation captured the elements in 5.4, the confidential item 5.4, and this doesn't have it. I would love the officer's recommendation with the new 4.
Well, perhaps you might move an amendment if we get to the foreshadowed.
If you'd accept it as an amendment, I'd move an amendment.
So, Councillor Gates, what would your appetite be, and Councillor Caldwell, sorry, I should say, Caldwell and Gates, what would your preparedness be to modify 2 so that it referred to sections 5.2, 5.3 and 5.4, given that it's merely noting those sections and not endorsing it?
I have no problem noting it. I don't want to endorse it. I don't like elements of it which I can't speak to. But I don't mind noting it. It means nothing.
Yeah, so
Why don't you say welcome and note?
we welcome a note. So, Councillor Caldwell, your thoughts on that, Councillor Caldwell?
Well, look, I'm similarly minded to Councillor Gates, but I just want to point out that bullet point 2 in 5.4 is missing a critical element of what I think we would be requiring. Bullet point 1 has a limitation in line 3 about potentially what our target negotiating position is. So I just think...
As is? All right, let's test the room. Did you wish to close, Councillor Caldwell? All right, so councillors, we have a motion before us. It's a changed recommendation. Should this fail, then we will move to the city officer recommendation. Importantly, just to remind everyone, the key difference here between the changed recommendation and the officer recommendation is that it calls for the establishment of that long-term funding agreement to support the maintenance obligation of the facility post-delivery, perhaps in perpetuity, but will also provide us cover in terms of that renewal cost, which I think is important. So, councillors, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour of the Caldwell-Gates proposal? That's Councillor Gates, Councillor Caldwell, Councillor Ryan Belden-Lumsden, Councillor Castro, Councillor Vorster. All those against? Councillor Tozer and Councillor O'Neill. The motion is carried. Councillors, obviously there's a lot of time between now and full council, and Director, if you wouldn't mind perhaps circulating that agreement, as I said, between now and full council, that might furnish councillors with more information and maybe there's a different outcome. But that's the committee position today. Thanks for that, councillors. We now deal with the least contentious, I'm sure, item. Could I ask for someone to move us into closed for similar reasons to the first? Councillor Gates, seconded by Councillor Tozer. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried. If we could Welcome back, viewers. We've had an opportunity today to consider Council's approach to the further embellishment and investment in the Spit Master Plan in partnership with the state government. We have a motion that will be moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Tozer. And while it is a closed session item, there is something that you can take from the recommendation. That is, what is proposed is some investment in the Federation Walk Coastal Reserve, key precinct of the Spit Master Plan. And the city has an intense interest in making sure that the recreational and environmental opportunities associated with that precinct are maximised. We also want to minimise the potential impost on the ratepayer. And we do so simply by noting that this is ultimately a state government master plan, a state government commitment, and a state government interest that will allow them to develop a ocean park, the first of its kind in Australia. We will make some investments into the project by way of our local government infrastructure plan. And again, that's highlighted in the recommendations. But ultimately, we're here to guide and massage the decisions of the state government to make sure that we get the very best possible result out of the plan that we have. Not much more can be said at this stage. It is a closed item, but I hope that in the fullness of time, the CEO may take steps to make some parts non-confidential so the community can better understand how this precinct will unfold and develop for their benefit and the benefit of those generations to follow. Councillors, were there any speakers against? No? Put that to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried. Councillors, there are no general business items. Happy to close the meeting at 11:50. Thank you.